boys don't cry. There's a lot of influencers out there that are putting across the message that men should control their emotions, that there's some kind of ideal natural state of masculinity which is all about, control, and that, expressing emotions is somehow, a really bad thing to do. Now, the trouble with this message is it's downright dangerous. If you look at statistics in the UK, for example, male suicide, apparently one man every 2 hours ends his life because he cannot cope. Now, that is just tragic. And there's a movement in the UK called Andy's Man Club, and it's a place where people can go and they can talk about their feelings and get something off their chest, and be heard by other men and seen. And something like this saves lives, okay? And it's because we all need to express our emotions. Now, obviously, we can't always expect someone to be there, a shoulder to cry on. And I think some of these influencers and these kind of, suppress your emotions crowd are in some ways maybe coming from a good place, in the sense that there's this idea that, if you're not going to get the support you need and you allow yourself to need it, then that can be very damaging. And I can understand that. But that's taking a kind of protective mechanism of self-reliance to a really unhealthy and unhelpful extreme, because we live in this interconnected world where there are people who will help you. And there's this saying, a problem shared is a problem halved, or whatever. And it's so true. I mean, my own experience in these groups, people can come in a terrible state. Some of them have maybe recently even attempted suicide. And then just talking with them afterwards, it's like there's something so precious and so valuable about being able to share the depth of how difficult life is. And I think there's a lot of judgment from these influencers that I've got in mind, and they just ain't really seen it yet. There's a Clash song, I can't think of the words, but it's like, you ain't been there, right? That's the kind of the idea. And we might think that we're doing really well and we've got our emotions in control, until something just unimaginably difficult can happen to us, because life can do this to us, right? So we may lose a loved one, and it may be in a really horrible way, and it may be a child, or it may be a parent or a spouse, and they may die of cancer, and it's going to totally traumatize us in a way that we just couldn't imagine. Or we may have a chronic illness ourselves, and I know from experience that how difficult this can be, because we lose our identity if we don't know where this illness is going. I mean, thankfully for me, I seem to be kind of climbing out of it, but for 2 years or so, I didn't know if I was going to be able to walk again, basically, or if I was going to have this kind of progressing horrible condition, because I thought I had MS. MS warriors out there, kudos, hang in there. But we need to talk about how difficult it is, because it can be so difficult. It can be so much more difficult than we can imagine. And if people are going to go around and sort of impose this idea like, real men are courageous and they keep their feelings in, and it's like, well, what are you talking about? You haven't been there. You can't know what it's like to be in someone else's shoes, to feel the depth of emotion that they're feeling. So please just take your judgment and shove it somewhere, right? It's just so unhelpful. And I would say, of course, we need to cry. Boys need to cry. Girls need to cry. We all need to cry, because crying is an emotional release mechanism. It's a natural mechanism that we've been given, that we've evolved with or whatever, that allows us to release emotional pain. That's what it's for. So, yeah, I just think it's really sad that people feel the need to, to kind of demonize or, suppress. And like I say, I can understand maybe where they're coming from. There might be some kind of good intention behind that. But I think it's misguided. I think it's based on ego. It's based on this necessity, this felt necessity to preserve some kind of self-image, or some kind of perceived image of others, of us, if that makes sense. So you often get people that are kind of really confident, like overconfident. And it's kind of ego, really. It looks like ego of like superiority, superiority complex. But very often that stems from actually a feeling of unworthiness that we're kind of overreacting to. And either way, it's all about ego. It's about this self-image, trying to protect it. And it's like, it's okay, mate. Just chill. It's okay. Life is hard and you're crying. And if you can get some comfort with that, then please, by all means, take that comfort, whether it's whether it's your partner or a friend, or if it's like some kind of service like the Samaritans or something like that. Because as I said earlier, sharing these feelings it brings so much relief. It kind of normalizes it. So you might think you're, the only man in the world that's got this terrible situation going on. Like, maybe your partner's going through a horrible illness and you're devastated, traumatized by it. And then you talk to someone, and either they give you the empathy you need, and they're not all about, I'm going to fix that, I'm going to give you all these suggestions. I made another video about not giving advice if someone comes to you with like emotional pain. It's very unhelpful. But you know, they're either going to give you the empathy if they're the right person to be talking to, or they're going to have had a similar experience, which they're not going to say, oh yeah, but what about my experience, and take the emphasis of you. That's not helpful. So that's an important caveat with this. But you know, if there is some kind of shared experience that we can relate to someone else's suffering, then when the time is right, it might be helpful to let them know that you have some idea what they're going through, to kind of normalize it for them. It's like, yeah, of course you're devastated, of course you're having trouble with, you know, whatever it is, like really bad anxiety or like, you know, depression or whatever, because that's the natural human response, and other people have that same response as well, and it's normal, and you're fine, and I'm not going to judge you for it. And all these people, you know, I think it's dangerous because a lot of particularly young men, I don't know what it's like for women, but you know, the kind of culture that I'm in, young men are looking for leadership, they're looking for guidance, and some of these kind of high profile influencers are coming out with stuff that I think is just downright damaging, and misguided. And I want to kind of offer an alternative perspective, really. So, you know, if you're struggling, then, you know, I feel for you, I'm sorry. You know, I hope it goes as well as it can for you, and I hope you get the help you need. And if you need to cry, please, by all means, cry as much as you need to. So that's my take on boys don't cry. They need to cry, and men need to cry as well. Thanks for watching.